A family gathering turned into a nightmare when my husband's mother stood up and announced, "We've decided you'll be a surrogate for my daughter." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, until I saw the signed medical paperwork. My husband smiled. It's already arranged. They weren't expecting the lawyer I had waiting outside. I never thought my life would end up like this. But if you've ever ignored red flags for years, convinced yourself people will change, and thought family means something, you might understand. This isn't about drama. It's about control. And what happens when you fight back. I'm a 33-year-old woman. At the time of the story, I'd been married to Ethan, 35M, for 7 years. No kids, by choice. I live in Austin, Texas, and I run a small photography studio. I love my work, I love my independence, and I used to love my quiet marriage. Ethan was a calm, steady type of man. He never raised his voice, never argued, always made logical points. But behind that calm was someone I didn't really know. We talked about kids. Once, early in our relationship, I told him I wasn't interested. He said he respected that. That was a lie. Ethan's younger sister Julia is 28. She's been trying to have a baby for years. Multiple rounds of IVF, a couple of miscarriages, hormone therapy, the whole thing. I always felt bad for her. I helped when I could. I even took her to some appointments when she visited Austin. But something always felt off about how Ethan talked about it. He'd mention her struggle like it was his problem. I brushed it off as sibling closeness. I should have asked more questions. Ethan's family lives in San Diego. Every Christmas, we visit them. This particular year, it was supposed to be quiet. Just his parents, us, and Julia with her husband Mark. We arrived on December 22nd. The first night was normal. The second day, Marlene, his mom, started making passive-aggressive comments about how generous some women are. I ignored it. Julia was quiet, emotional. I figured it was just holiday stress. Ethan was acting a little too happy, calm, but unusually formal. He was talking to me like we were business partners. That quiet voice he uses when he wants to make a deal. I didn't think much of it yet. We were all seated. Prime rib, mashed potatoes, candlelight. Julia was wearing a necklace I'd never seen before. Marlene had wine in her hand. Then she stood up. She tapped her fork on the glass like she was about to give a toast. And she said, "We have an announcement." A gift, really. We've decided that Natalie will be the surrogate for Julia's baby. Everyone clapped. I laughed. Not politely. I laughed hard. I thought it was a bad joke. Until I looked at Ethan. He was smiling. Like the deal was done. I said, "Wait, what?" Then Julia pulled out a folder from her purse. She said, "It's all ready. You don't have to worry about a thing." She opened the folder and pushed it across the table. Inside, a medical packet. Consent forms. Information from a clinic in La Jolla. My full name typed into every field. My birth date. My blood type. Pre-filled forms. A signature line. Blank. Waiting for me. I looked around the table. No one looked surprised. No one acted like this was shocking. Ethan looked proud. Marlene was nodding. Julia was on the verge of tears, happy ones. Ethan said, "Everything's already set up. You just need to sign." I said, "Sign what? What are you talking about?" Marlene leaned forward and said, "This is a family decision. Julia has been through enough. You don't even want children. This is something only you can give." I felt dizzy. My chest was tight. My throat was closing. They had scheduled medical appointments for me without my consent. The first injection date was next week. The clinic visit was booked. The documents were finalized. I wasn't asked. I was told. Back in October, Ethan had started acting strange. Hiding phone calls. Being overly attentive. Encouraging me to cut back on caffeine and get more sleep. Saying I should avoid alcohol. I joked once that he sounded like I was pregnant. He smiled and said, "That's funny." Julia texted me weird stuff too. Like, "You're going to be such a blessing. Thank you for doing this for me. I know it'll be weird at first, but I'll be with you every step." I thought she meant emotionally. I didn't think she meant medically. Legally. Physically. What Ethan didn't know was that I had already talked to a lawyer. I'm not a paranoid person, but the change in Ethan's behavior had put me on edge. I couldn't explain it, but I knew something was coming. I had started collecting evidence, screenshots, texts, even had a friend, who's a nurse, look into some of the weird clinic emails that were getting filtered into Ethan's shared inbox. And I had quietly contacted Kendra, a lawyer in Austin who handles reproductive rights and marital fraud cases. She told me, "If you get even a hint that they're planning to force your hand, let me know." So I did. I texted her from under the table. Just one word. Now. I stood up from the table and said, "Give me a minute. I need air." Marlene called after me, "Don't be dramatic, Natalie." I went outside. Kendra pulled up in a black SUV like she was arriving at a war zone. She got out in heels, blazer on, documents in hand. She had brought everything. She handed me a file folder. She said, "Ready." I said, "Let's go in." Back inside, everyone had started dessert. Marlene was handing out slices of pie. I walked in with Kendra. Ethan stood up like he'd seen a ghost. Kendra said, "Good evening. I'm Natalie's legal counsel. Everything you've planned stops here." Marlene froze mid-bite. Julia dropped her fork. Kendra opened her folder and placed a stack of papers on the table. She said, "This is a formal cease and desist. You are to have no further contact with any clinic regarding Natalie's body or medical history. You will also find a restraining notice against La Jolla Fertility Associates, who will be receiving notice of fraudulent activity. Any attempt to proceed will be considered reproductive coercion and medical fraud." Ethan looked at me and said, "You're blowing this out of proportion." I didn't respond. Kendra did. "Your lucky criminal charges aren't on the table. Yet." The silence after Kendra's words lasted maybe 5 seconds. But it felt like a whole hour. No one moved. The only sound was the soft hum of the dishwasher from the kitchen. Marlene was the first to speak. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She said, "You really brought a lawyer on Christmas Eve?" Ethan stepped toward me. He wasn't smiling anymore. His voice was low. "You made this into a war." I said, "No, you did." I looked Ethan in the eye and asked, "How long have you been planning this?" He said nothing. Kendra looked through her file and said, "Long enough that he started transferring shared funds to a separate account in August. Long enough that Julia booked her first consultation using Natalie's name in September." I turned to Julia. "You knew," she said. "You said you didn't want kids. This way you don't have to raise it. It's a win-win." I was shaking. Not just from anger. From the realization that these people had never seen me as family. Just a vessel. A womb. Something to use. Marlene stood up and walked to her bedroom. When she came back, she was holding another envelope. She tossed it on the table. Inside, an updated version of Ethan's will and life insurance policy. It named Julia's future child as the primary heir. Not our child. Not his and my future child. Julia's. She said, "We wanted to make sure everything was protected. The child will carry Ethan's name." Everything in me went still. I looked at Ethan again. And I asked the question I hadn't dared to ask. "Is this your child?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Julia did. She whispered, "Yes." Ethan and Julia used his sperm. They planned to implant it in me without asking. I was supposed to carry his child, which would be raised as Julia's. All of it hidden behind paperwork, manipulation, and family pressure. I sat down. My knees felt like they would give out. This wasn't just medical coercion. This was incestuous by design. Not physically, maybe, but emotionally? Legally? What the hell kind of family does this? Kendra calmly slid another paper across the table. "We also have proof of falsified medical consent forms submitted under Natalie's name. That's federal fraud. And if you think this won't make national headlines, try me." Ethan's father, who had been silent the entire time, suddenly spoke. He looked at Marlene. "You did this. You've pushed them since they were kids. You always said Julia deserved everything Natalie had." Marlene shot him a look that could cut glass. "Don't start, Richard. You knew this was the plan." So, even his own father knew. Later that night, after we left the house, Kendra showed me emails she had pulled from the private investigator. Julia and Ethan had been emailing back and forth under aliases. They used a shared Google account, writing drafts but never sending them. A trick people used to avoid leaving email trails. They planned everything. Fertility appointments. Legal loopholes. What to say if I started acting difficult. They referred to me as the body. If the body resists, we apply pressure through mom. The body is already married. That helps with legal framing. We can offer compensation later if she gets mad. They didn't want a family. They wanted control. Julia couldn't carry a child, and in their minds, I was the closest, clean option. Legal. Convenient. Controlled. Ethan never loved me the way I thought. I was safe. Quiet. Passive. Until I wasn't. 2 days later, while staying at a hotel downtown, I got a call from a blocked number. It was a nurse. From a private clinic in Austin. She said, "I just wanted to follow up on the embryo storage. Your mother-in-law came by earlier today asking for records under your name. She said she was acting as your medical proxy." I never authorized anyone as my medical proxy. Marlene was trying to move biological material, embryos that did not exist, in my name. She had filed paperwork pretending to be me weeks ago. She had forged my signature. Mark, Julia's husband, emailed me the next day. He said, "I had no idea this was going on behind my back. I only found out after your lawyer showed up. I thought it was an anonymous donor. I didn't know it was Ethan. He asked if we could talk. I didn't know whether to believe him, but I met him for coffee in a public place. Mark looked like a man whose world had fallen apart. He showed me something on his phone. A recording. He had confronted Julia about the whole thing. In the recording, she admitted that she and Ethan had been planning this since 2021. That she deserved to have a child tied to her bloodline. That Natalie doesn't deserve to be in the family if she won't sacrifice. Mark moved out that night. He told me he's filing for divorce. I noticed a white car outside my new apartment the next day. I saw it again the day after that. And again, parked across the street from my studio. Kendra ran the plates. Registered to Marlene's second cousin. A guy I had never met. A retired cop. They were trying to keep tabs on me. For what? To intimidate me? To try and get leverage? To see if I'd go public? About a week after Christmas, Kendra sent formal letters to the La Jolla Clinic. She threatened to report them to both the California Medical Board and the Department of Health and Human Services if they didn't respond within 72 hours. They did. Quickly. And panicked. Turns out, the consent forms under my name were submitted by Marlene. The clinic assumed she was my legal medical proxy. They never verified with me directly. They claimed it was an internal communication error. But the real bombshell was buried in their records. They had already begun the fertilization process. They had combined Ethan's sperm with Julia's donor egg months ago, not mine. The plan wasn't just for me to carry a child. They were hoping I'd never even know what I was carrying. It was all arranged to look legal. Until it wasn't. We set a meeting at a neutral location. A conference room in a downtown legal building. Kendra said it was time. I agreed. Ethan, Marlene, Julia, their lawyer, who honestly looked miserable, Kendra, and I sat around a long table. The air was thick. No one smiled. Kendra started, "This meeting is being recorded. Anything said can be submitted as evidence." Marlene interrupted, waving her hand. "Enough with the theatrics. We're here to resolve this privately." Kendra didn't blink. "We tried private. You forged documents, violated medical privacy, and attempted to coerce a woman into surrogacy under false pretenses." Ethan finally spoke. "We were trying to give Julia a future. You wouldn't understand." I leaned in and looked right at him. "You planned to use me. You lied. You put me at risk. And you didn't even have the guts to tell me the truth." Julia burst out. "You should be grateful. You're nothing. You're an empty shell walking around wasting a body that could have meant something." Dead silence. Even their lawyer looked stunned. Marlene put her hand on Julia's shoulder, but said nothing. Kendra calmly slid a document toward their lawyer. "Here's the formal lawsuit. Fraud. Coercion. Emotional distress. We're going to trial unless we settle." Today, the clinic had been cooperative. Too cooperative. They provided audio logs of intake calls and emails, including one from Marlene, sent months earlier. She had told them, "We'll get her to sign. We're working on isolating her financially first." Isolating me. They were cutting me off. Making sure I had no money, no support, no way to walk away once it started. Their plan was to trap me. The goal was to keep me calm and compliant. Marlene even referred to it as a controlled environment. Ethan didn't deny it. He just lowered his head. Kendra filed everything. Their lawyer immediately begged for settlement discussions. We agreed to mediation, but not before serving restraining orders to Marlene and Julia. Both were ordered to stay 500 feet from me, my home, and my business. Ethan. I didn't need to serve. Because I filed for divorce the next day. In Texas, a divorce based on fraud and emotional abuse moves fast. My documentation was airtight. We settled in 5 weeks. I walked away with 70% of the shared marital assets. I kept the house. Ethan had to move back into Marlene's guest room. Remember Mark, Julia's husband? After the conference room meeting, he went nuclear. He leaked everything to Ethan's company. Emails, recordings, screenshots. Ethan lost his job within days. Violation of ethics and damage to company reputation. His LinkedIn profile disappeared. I didn't feel good about that. But I didn't feel bad either. Mark and I aren't close. We never were. But he checks in from time to time. He told me he was filing for divorce too. He moved to Seattle for a fresh start. The week after the confrontation, I didn't leave my apartment. I didn't eat much. I stared at my wall, reading and rereading those emails between Ethan and Julia. They didn't talk like siblings. Not in the way I understood family. The way they joked about the body me, like I wasn't even a person. It messed with my head. I cried until my ribs hurt. I thought, was I ever loved? Was any of this real? My friends tried to help. My best friend Carmen came over and just held my hand. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside me in the dark. That was all I needed. A few people from Ethan's circle reached out. One of his old friends texted, "I don't even know what to say." I didn't believe it until I heard the tapes. One of Julia's coworkers sent me an anonymous email saying, "She's been like this since college. I'm just sorry you were the one who paid the price." Even Ethan's dad sent me a letter. I was silent when I should have spoken. "That's on me. You didn't deserve what they did to you." I didn't reply. The lawsuits settled quietly. The clinic paid damages. Marlene signed a gag order. Julia disappeared from social media completely. I think she moved somewhere in Nevada. I don't know. I don't care. Ethan sent me one last email. "I made the worst mistake of my life. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here." I blocked him without replying. There's no real way to explain the kind of betrayal that cuts this deep. It wasn't just about a pregnancy. It wasn't just about lies. It was about being stripped of autonomy, of being dehumanized by people who called themselves family. It taught me something no book or therapist could. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it is. If people treat you like a tool, walk away. The first time. Don't wait for Christmas dinner to find out you were never a person in their story. Just a piece on a board they thought they controlled. I'm not okay, but I'm not broken either. I'm rebuilding. Slowly. Some days I feel strong. Some days I feel nothing. But I'm free. And no one will ever control my body or my future again.